Allow me to introduce our guest today. He is currently the head of data and engineering at January Capital, a venture capital firm based in Singapore. He is responsible for building data-driven solutions that will complement January Capital's investment process. Before joining January Capital, he was the head of data at StashAway, a digital wealth manager that has assets of more than $1 billion under management. As employee number 2, he helped build the company's flagship product since day one as team lead and later on as an engineering manager. He was instrumental in shaping the code and culture of the team during his almost 6-year tenure at StashAway. And before StashAway, our guest, who is also a self-taught developer, has been involved in several tech startups at different growth stages where he wore many hats. And prior to that, he was in the finance equities market, executing trades for institutional and corporate clients when he was at Phillip Securities, and then moving on to be a day trader. Our guest graduated from Singapore Management University with a bachelor's in business management, majoring in finance and information systems, which I can tell you is not a very common combination back in 2005 to 2009. And he managed all this alongside being a freelance photographer, taking corporate shoots for clients, including big MNCs. Our guest and I are fellow alumnus at Singapore Management University, and we also serve our Singapore National Service and reservists at the same army unit. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Yaohong.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on board today. Right, let's have a good time.
Yep, look forward to that. So you are very interesting. You have a very interesting career path, rather unconventional. And before I start talking about your career path, do you have any interesting or funny story about yourself you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, maybe along the lines of interesting or unconventional. Last week, I caught COVID, right? And then unfortunately, I lost my sense of taste. And then just recalling this story last night, and just found it so weird, So I basically couldn't even taste anything, right? And I have very acute sense of smell and taste, Like when I drink wine, I can taste all the layers, right? And then suddenly being unable to taste anything was just weird. So we tried a few things. We did McSpicy, no taste. We did 4 different like experiment, right? We did 4 different sauces, right? I closed my eyes, I put fries, I had no idea what I was eating. Next day I had mala, I couldn't taste anything. Like on top of having COVID, but it was just trying up. So I was taking a shower, and then suddenly I had a shower thought. I was like, hey, what about soap? Do you think I can taste soap? Like, I was some soap. I put it in my mouth and broke. I tell you, it was very terrible. It was so bitter, right? And that my whole mouth was just filled with like this like bitter taste. And then the worst thing, because it's so right, you put water on it, trying to wash it off, right? It falls out, and then it goes like,
So you could taste soap?
I could taste bitter.
Okay.
So I could taste bitter and salt and a little bit of spice, that's all. But you can't taste all the different flavors in between.
And how about smell? Like, do you do something?
No, I totally couldn't smell anything.
And
my son poop also cannot smell.
Oh no! So do you know how long is this gonna last?
No, I think it's back already. I can taste half lah, carefully.
Okay. Wow, goodness.
Yeah, but not as sharp as before, but hopefully it will go away. Yeah. So talking about unconventional and experimental, right? A very experimental kind of thing. Yeah.
From the people that I know who got COVID, I think there are not many that I heard of that lost the sense of taste and smell. I think those who did that were in the early days.
Yeah.
And I think of the latest variants, I don't think people have gone into that extent.
Yeah, so it's very weird. Yeah, it might be some weird new variant or something.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But thankfully now everything is back in order. Right. So yeah, all good.
I'm glad to hear that. So I'm personally very curious about certain career moves that you have made. To start off, like maybe you can tell us about your role at the venture capital firm that you're doing. What does the company do? And what do you do? What's your role at the company?
Okay. I just joined actually 3 weeks ago. We're very, very new to the firm, right? And January Capital is actually a leading venture cap firm that invests in technology businesses that will power growth in the Asia-Pac region over the next coming decades, right? So the firm very focused a lot on partnering with individuals who dedicate themselves to solve some of the biggest challenges in terms of building enduring companies. So JCap has about more than 50 portfolio companies, right, including Aku Laku in Indonesia, Shopback, e-commerce, Cargo, Schedulo, right, and many others. Right? So JCap is actually based in Singapore, and it manages more than $225 million in AUM. And my role is as a head of data engineering is actually interesting because VC firms typically do not have such a role. And we are building some internal products to help with the investment thesis, right? As well as tapping on my expertise as an ex-operator in terms of looking at investments. So far in my last couple of weeks, I've been building up our internal tools, right? At least the foundations of it. And then I'm also been talking to several startups already, right? Along with our investor and to add on as an additional technological perspective to some of these investments. Yeah. So
And to the audience out there who may not be so familiar with the tech or the VC, which stands for venture capital, can you tell us, give us a slight primer about like this VC kind of scene? Maybe I'll start with this, right? There is different stages that different VCs invest in. I think that could be a good start. And which stage of the investing stage does JCap, January Capital, invest in?
so GenCap invests in very early stage, right? So like pre-seed, seed, Series A kind of rounds. So it's at a stage in time, at a point in time actually for a lot of companies, they are just looking at product market fit, right? And it's a lot about the founders, how well they know the problem space, what have they done before, how can they grow a team, right? And it's very interesting at this point where anything goes, right? Yeah, well, of course, the risk is also highest, right? That's where most things blow up in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for those in the audience who are a bit more savvy with the tech and finance news, I think as we're recording this conversation in September 2022, a lot of tech valuations have come down, especially for startups in recent months. And how's that going? Does it reflect in what January Capital does? What's its current sentiment now?
I mean, so far, I think it's still business as usual from what I see. Right? We haven't been here for long, but from what I see, still talking to investors, still talking to companies to invest, right? Talking to investors to get more money. And while maybe compared to before, it could be busier. I don't have a reference point,
Sure.
right? But from the street, someone from a startup industry, I think sentiments are definitely not as rosy as it was like last year or the year before last. Yeah.
But it could also be a good time for VCs to go in and be a shark, right? And get very good,
Yeah,
attractive
I would think
valuations,
so.
right?
Yeah. Or rather, you want to spend more effort trying to find better deals, right?
Yeah.
And so just
And
blindly throwing money around. Yeah.
any sector, or is it sector agnostic for
Well,
January
sector
Capital?
agnostic, but more on like the pick and shovel. They're very thesis driven. So things like local movement, right? Or building the foundations of commerce, for example, in the space. Yeah. So that's the focus of the company.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we caught up for lunch a few weeks back, when you told me about your move, I was also very surprised and of course very happy for you. Surprised because such a role that you have, it's not very common in this scene. So I think it's combining your past experiences at StashAway, doing data and tech, and then going to the VC world, the investing world, to build some kind of model, just so that the VC model, the VC investing model at January Capital is a bit more backed by certain set of fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
So well, congrats on the move. And
Thanks.
next question, it's about your time at StashAway, right? I think it's
Yeah.
not a short time. It's coming to 6 years, your tenure at StashAway, and you're employee number 2. And I personally have money, right? I put in money in StashAway. I would believe one of the very first factors of knowing StashAway was through you. I think
Right.
you announced on LinkedIn that you joined StashAway. I was like, what is StashAway? I've been admiring your work from afar, right? I mean, you didn't know this. So the fact that you make your decision to join StashAway, it got me curious.
Right.
Tell us a bit more about StashAway, the kind of business model that StashAway operates in, and the kind of role that you were doing at StashAway.
All right, so StashAway is actually a digital wealth manager or a Robo-Advisor, right? We were definitely the pioneers when we started in 2016. Back then, there was one or two other competitors that were just starting out. Right? I happened to be on LinkedIn. I received a message from my CTO then, of course, and then we connected over LinkedIn. And then I met the founding team. They were looking, of course, to build the product and then looking to hire the first few engineering people, right? And then I was kind of looking at the point in time. So we connected on LinkedIn. I met all the founders, had coffee with them, chatted with Kelly, chatted with Freddie, and then it did all quite well, right? I was like, okay, why not, Series A, I mean, pre-seed, right? And it was definitely a gamble, right, at that point in time, because like, what is Robo-Advisory? There was nothing like this in Asia, right? There were some examples in the US, like Betterment, Wealthfront, and then they were around for maybe at that point in time, 2, 3 years already. But you could also see that the trajectory of their growth was pretty good. So it of course piqued my interest back due to my previous experience in equities market, right? So it kind of like, combine what I had done before, or rather something I was very interested in terms of finance, investing, and then with my tech skills, right, and I could actually build something and build a product. So I was like, okay, sure, why not? Let's just do it. And then I signed up, and before I knew it, 6 years went by, right? No thanks to COVID for the last 2 years. Yeah.
And for the audience out there who probably not so familiar with like Robo-Advisor, the term Robo-Advisor
Yeah.
or digital wealth manager, like can you give a bit more insights or give a bit more explanation of how's it different from a typical banking instrument, for
Right.
example?
So I think the nearest, I would say, in most people's minds, right, like when you look at investments, they probably will think of ETFs or think of mutual funds, right? Actually, back then, before ETFs was just starting out also. So a lot of people's approach to investing was like maybe a financial advisor sells you a unit trust, right, which is actually kind of like a mutual fund and all that. And you invest in a fund, then they would maybe invest in S&P 500 or Asia or China by different teams. And then they try to manage the buying and selling of the equities inside, right? So of course, the aim is to have long-term wealth, right? Long-term growth in your portfolio. And, unfortunately, the industry is such that mutual funds actually have very high fees, right? So like when you buy a mutual fund from a bank, for example, you stand up paying 2% already for a sales charge. Because you got to pay the guy who's selling you the product, right? The financial advisor. Right. And then the fund itself has its own management fees, right? Which can be very high, like 4%, 10%, maybe not 10%, but like 3 to 4% for some of them. And as a finance person, to me, it felt very onerous, right? And it was very mystical, right? Like a man on the street asking me about investing, he was like, I don't know. How do I open a stockbroking account, right? Do I just buy a stock? Do I buy this? And with the advent of ETFs coming into the space, actually it makes investing much easier, right? Instead of just buying one company, you can buy a basket of companies, right? Like S&P 500, you just buy ETF, right? Or Triple Q, right? You can buy Nasdaq, for example. Yeah,
So for the audience, ETF stands for exchange traded
exchange traded
funds.
funds. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think you talk about like paying the man who sells you that product. That's what I think on term sheet is called distribution cost, right? Distribution,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I was in banking in my start of my career. So when I saw distribution, I thought it's a term only used for physical goods. So then after knowing that, so they actually stash all this sales charges or sales commission under this term called distribution. Yeah. So and it's funny in my opinion because you were a day trader and now how big StashAway means using some kind of algorithm there is a bit less human centric to invest for people, right?
No, so actually, when I was doing day trading, or rather prop trading, I would say, right, I was doing quite a bit of algorithmic kind of approach to the market, very systematic, very quantitative type of methods. So there was, quite a lot of math involved, trying to build models, trying to build, understand the finding noise in the noise, right? Trying to find some kind of edge in the noise. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting that transition, but in between, I actually was running my own company, right?
Yeah.
So I was not a very successful trader, I would say, unfortunately. Like, but it was something I needed to get out of my system, right? Maybe more about it later, right? So I started my own development shop, right? And then I started building products for customers. And along the way, I thought it was actually very interesting, this whole process, right, of building a product. But I didn't own it, right? People are paying me, I was just going to build it. I had my own team, we were just building out several products for quite a few companies, and it was fun, but there was no ownership. That's why when StashAway approached me, I was like, hey, why not do something different and see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us. I'm curious about your decision making, right? You were gonna be employee number 2 Do you know that you're going to be employee number 2 at StashAway?
Yeah, I know. I knew it was actually very early stage. Yeah. So I
What?
was actually the first engineering hire. Right? Then we started building the team around that. Yeah.
How was that decision process like from doing your own thing to joining StashAway, being a very early
Yeah.
team member? How was
So
the risk? There's a lot of
so
risk, right, associated with it.
yeah, I would say in between there was also something that happened. I missed out the details. So when I was running my own shop, there was a customer that we were working with, right? And then they actually hired us in a sense, right? Because they really liked the way we were building the product and the way we worked. So they just bought me and my partner out. So we joined this company called Creon Data for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So unfortunately for that, the project after a few months, they realized, okay, maybe it wasn't going in the direction that they wanted it to hit, right? So we were like, okay, maybe it's time for me to make another move. So it was all about timing, right? In a sense.
Right.
But I didn't really plan it, and then LinkedIn message, man, So yeah, in fact, for JCap also, I was responded to a LinkedIn message to a recruiter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a recruiter send me a message about this role in a VC. I was like, huh? Never see before, right? It's very rare, right? So I was like, why not just reply and then just have a conversation, right? I mean, there's no loss in that, right? Just having open conversations with people to find out what they're doing and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To you, it sounds like there wasn't much perceived risk of being an early.
Of course there was,
employee.
of course there was. I mean, of course, coming off from doing my own company, I would say the risk is definitely less. Right? When you're running your own show, you have to worry about not just your own paycheck, you have to worry about your people that you're feeding, right?
Yeah.
Your family, your employees, your partners, investors, if you bring in VC money or something like that. Right. So definitely compared to that, right, joining an early stage startup is less risk because I get paid anyway. And what's the downside, right? The downside is that this thing doesn't work out, I lose a job, right? I can always find another job. So that was a very simple heuristic, I guess, in terms of making a decision like that. But of course, if you're transiting from a very well-paying job to early stage, then yeah, the risk is definitely higher. That's a well-paying job, 96, 97, I don't know, and you just end up get a paycheck end of the month, right? You do work, don't do work, also get paid. Startup, you don't do work, yeah, your startup will actually go down. Yeah, your contribution is very high, especially at the early stage. Yeah.
What you just said, I wanna double click on that. You sounded like you were not afraid to get another job, right? If you were fired by an early stage startup, right? If you lose that job,
I wouldn't say fired, but more like if the startup doesn't work out, right? I think the largest risk for joining an early stage company is that the idea that you're building doesn't work out. Like you lose funding and then end of the day, the entire team just dissolves, right? Or you struggle for a long time, your pay gets stagnant, or there's quite a lot of things that can happen, right? Yeah, especially at the early stage. So the risk is very, very high at the point in time in terms of like finding product market fit, getting paid on time even.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Especially at that point in time. I think in 2016, right? The space was just starting to heat up.
Yeah.
Right. Like we only saw like for me at least, right, 2018, 2019, where suddenly, right, startups became the in thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then especially with a lot more money coming in. So pays actually went up.
Yeah.
In fact, I was taking pay cuts all along the way, right? Where in a lot of my career transitions. Like I took a pay cut to go do trading, right? And then I started a company. Then I did quite well. Took another kind of like a pay cut to join the company again, right? So in terms of optimizing for my so-called income, right, it probably wasn't the best decision, like if you're trying to optimize on that, right? Compared to someone, okay, I go to a job, I go to a bank, right? I have a job. I reach a director level, I go up higher executive director, your path is set, right? And your pay just keeps going up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you, right? The context. It struck out to me that you were confident, right? That if the startup that you join doesn't work out, you could get, or rather, you're not so afraid about landing another job, another role. And I don't see this kind of confidence in a lot of people nowadays, in my opinion, or at least in my circle,
right?
Or at least at our peers, right? Because we went through the same batch at SMU,
Right.
and I like your counter example that you gave was like someone who was being a high paying job and joining a startup with a pay cut. My logic is that why can't that same person who's been getting high paying job at a bank or a big MNC also think along the same way, right? That if I join a startup that doesn't work out in the end, I can always go back to the corporate world. I feel that there's less people who think that way
Right.
versus your situation, right? So
Right.
that to me struck out to me, right? Like
Okay.
yeah. So there's always a cut, right? Say for example,
Yeah.
pay cut in terms of also risk, increase in risk when you
Yeah,
join something established to joining a company that is more early stage. But what kind of employees who make this switch think the same? That
I think,
regardless where you come from.
yeah, fundamentally, I would say it's, I guess, confidence in my skills, right? Or rather, my many skills, right? I would term myself like a cockroach, right? Like, cannot kill one. Even if I, don't have this job, I have a lot of other skills that I could tap on to kind of survive and make money, right? Simple things like, okay, I can drive a car, right? If I really need money, I could always, go and be a Grab driver, for example.
Yeah.
Right? You can still make money, right? You can still survive. So it's all about survivability in a sense, right? Like having something to fall back on.
Yep.
So I would say that if you were a career person, right, and you don't spend time building up skills, or rather transferable skills, then maybe the perceived risk is very high.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whereas for me, I can program, I can develop, right? And it's an industry where demand is definitely higher than supply. Right. So if it doesn't work out, I mean, I have no doubt that, like companies are lining up to hire, people with this kind of particular skill sets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is cool. We're just getting to the meat of the conversation, and then I want to sort of end off the part about StashAway. So, and before StashAway, you did your own thing. You told us that you were doing your own shop or your own thing, and then you got sort of like bought out, and that gave you some kind of lump sum, right, of cash.
It wasn't a lot. I mean, it wasn't like a huge amount of money.
Okay.
It was just okay only, you know what I mean? Because I spent so many years of my career actually without a lot of money.
Okay.
Right. I literally paid myself like $700 the first 2 years of running my own shop per month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's actually even less than reservist pay. So I was actually quite happy to go reservist. Because reservist actually paid me more. With my risk pay and my appointment pay and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And yeah, well, now I'm stuck in my train of thought. So reservist pays
go back
more.
To the list, yeah.
Yeah, no, all good. The reservist pays you more, and let's talk about before you run your own shop, before doing the tech stuff. You were a day trader, right? And you were in finance, right? More or less, right?
Yeah.
You were, of course, straight away after we graduated in a very bad year in 2009.
Yep.
The year after Lehman Brothers collapsed. You joined, you secured a job in finance, which is quite rare at the point in time. So you were doing institutional sales at Phillip Securities.
Yep.
And then you do day trader. Now, I think this move from finance / trading to tech is super, super drastic.
Yeah.
How do you manage this maneuver?
I would say it wasn't by volition, right? So thankfully, I mean, again, I had ability to program or code, right? In a sense, I spent when we were growing up, I like tinkering in computers already. So very early on even in school, I was actually freelancing to do websites and all that, right? So I was kind of earning money from there, right? I also was doing a photography gig. We can talk about it later, right? While I was in school, so I was always having all these side hustles at the side, and programming was something that came naturally in a sense, right? So when I was doing sales trading, I also tried to involve a bit of this kind of approach to the markets, right? Recently, I met my old boss, and then he did me a comment, right? He remembered me because even though we were doing sales, I also built some stuff, right, to make my job easier, right? Like small programs, I put the daily price changes of all the equities in Singapore, right? And then it just pop up. I did some simple regression models and say, okay, these are the stocks that are kind of like gaining momentum, and these are the ones that are losing momentum. And using that, I could turn it into a story to talk to my customers, right? I was like, oh yeah, by the way, stock A has been rising in the last 3-4 days. It's quite interesting. Maybe you want to take a look. Maybe I can find out for you on the street what's happening, right? So as a sales trader, your job is a lot about interrelationship, right? Interpersonal relationships, right? Doing a sales kind of thing. and they're executing for customers. So at a point in time, while I was doing the execution, I thought I was very good in the market. My read was kind of good, I would think, right? And then I wanted to make money, so I said, oh, why not just join, prop trading? Because a few friends went in. I was like, okay, sure, let's try this out. Right? Unfortunately, I spent almost 3 years at a gig. Right? It wasn't really paid. Right? You have a small allowance. Right? We were kind of like commission. Right? You get paid what you make. Right? So if you don't make anything, you don't get paid. But it was actually very good training because it forced me to be again out of the comfort zone. Right? Trying to come up with models, trying to come up with different approaches to tackle the market. Right. Unfortunately, I would say I kind of suck at the gig lah. So and then I had to move out of it. And then because I was away from finance for a couple of 2 to 3 years really, right? It wasn't easy to get back into the finance track, right? Imagine back then, like 4 to 5 years out of school, right? I tried to apply for a couple of jobs, right? I didn't have the relevant experience in a sense, right? To get some jobs in certain, like I want to go back to do sales trading, right? But the latest experience wasn't kind of relevant, right? If I want to do sales job, they'd be like, well, are we looking for someone a bit more senior? You're too expensive for someone at the point in time of your career, right? And then, so I was like, okay, I maybe go and do some consulting, right? Because I mean, I've been doing that anyway in the past, right? Talk to several people, and somehow door just didn't open. So I was like, why not just, in the meantime, I needed to get some money. So I started doing some projects for a couple of contacts, right? And then somehow from there, it was like, hey, cheap, not too bad, and then started getting a bit more deals coming in, right? Deal flow, right? And then I went out there, started doing sales, trying to build up this business. And then I thought, okay, why not build this in a business? And then I sat down and plan out like how this business would look like, right? Like in terms of how I wanted it to grow, right? I modeled it after several large development companies that were doing well, right, globally, right? The approach I find customers, the way we tackle problems, and I think end of the day, I am a problem solver, right? I like to solve complicated problems, right? Give me a problem set, look at it, okay, yeah. How do we break this down into smaller problem sets, and how do we solve it? So that part of it actually spoke to me a lot, and then one thing led to another, running my shop for 3 years. It wasn't easy, right? Thankfully, I had a very good partner with me who was more of the tech guy. Actually, I did a lot of sales. Right? I was doing programming, but I did all the sales. Right, and then I go home, I program, and then with my partner, we managed to secure a lot more customers, and we grew the business to actually quite a decent scale for a very small shop, right? But then we had a problem. We couldn't hire. Right, because that was a time where Grab started becoming, and other startups started coming onto the scene. They were getting very aggressive in terms of pay.
Yep.
Right. So for a fresh grad, I couldn't pay $3,000 to get a fresh grad anymore. Right. The pay started going up crazy. I was like, wow, these guys are even getting paid more than me.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
so question for the audience out there, what is prop trading?
Prop trading is proprietary trading, right? So basically, some guy has some money, right? They fund you to trade. So think of it as like a small, let's say startup in a sense, right? Like you come in, you take someone's money, right? You trade, and then you share the profits with your backer.
Got it.
Yeah.
And can I assume that while you're doing your prop trading for 2 years, along these 2 years, you already started the side hustle of like going to people trying to sell your tech stuff, right? Your tech shop.
No, I didn't. Yeah. Well, I mean, the job itself was time consuming, right? I was on the floor like maybe 16 hours a day, every day. It was very time consuming. It was exhausting, to be honest, right? Because, and very desperate times, I would say, I didn't get paid a lot of eating into my savings, and yeah. But thankfully, I mean, the firm was very, very kind to me because, in any other place, right, after 3 months or 6 months of non-performance, they would have fired the person, right? But they kept me around. I think because I was always trying to find different edges, I would say, right, that was unconventional to what they were doing, right? And then, but unfortunately, there also wasn't anyone who could give guidance in that sense, right? So I was just groping around in the dark. Yeah. So read a lot of books, talk to a lot of people, and internet. And then at that point in time, right, there wasn't a lot of open information on the internet. Right, compared to this day and age, right? These days, right, you want to learn about trading, you want to learn about markets, right? There are websites, there are Discord groups, there are Reddit, there's so many places for someone who wants to learn about the market, right? To actually gain the information. Right, so it was definitely a different time back then in 2013, 2014. Yeah.
When do you know that it was time to cut the cord and do a different thing and move on from prop trading?
I think you know lah, when you dread going to work, right? Every morning you wake up, and it's very consistent, right? Every morning in all the changes, right? When I wake up in the morning, right, you dread going to work, right? You just go like, oh man, I still got like last
But what
few
happened
more
to
hours. Yeah.
the concept of sunk cost, right? I mean, you spend, this is the start of a career, right? You spend almost 2 years in Philips Securities and then almost 2 years in prop trading. That's 4 years, right? And some say 4 years is valuable, right? I mean, some people complain to use NS is insane. So how about like sunk costs? How do you deal with sunk costs? Like, hey, I spent my 4 years of my early career now in this, and now what's next, right? How do you get through this?
I think probably it comes from trading itself, right? Where we are conditioned to cut losses, right? And I think one of the biggest issue that a lot of people have is this concept of holding on to losses, right? Like back holding, right? If I talk about Reddit terms, right? You buy something, it drops to $20. It's really so low, never mind, you might go back up, and then you just keep holding on to it.
Yeah.
Right. And then it goes to zero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a human psychology that's actually very hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Right, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's loss aversion, right? Is that the word?
Yeah, loss aversion, right? Because cutting loss means you admit that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I still suffer from it on my own trading now and then.
Yeah.
Right. I should have cut something earlier, I didn't, right? Even after so many years, I still suffer from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And how hard was it like, or how was it like to move from like prop trading to setting up your own tech shop?
Oh man, that was like probably one of the most difficult things I've done in my life. Right, I had no industry connections. I didn't know anyone. Right, and a lot of hustle was there. Right, basically every day just going out there to make friends. Join different networking groups. Right, I remember going to like random meetups. Right, when small business meetups, because my target audience was, since I'm a young small company, I could only target smaller companies. Right. Because I had no track record, right? So in order for me to build my track record, I need to meet all these smaller companies to gain sales, hopefully.
Give us an example of a solution that your tech shop or your company has provided for a company.
Okay, so very simple. Right? We were a business consulting / IT solution kind of firm, right? So typically we would go to SME and then they would have some kind of issue. For example, the simplest job would be like, I need a website, right? So those are the easiest job, right? Build website only. Right? And at that point in time, the tools also not available for companies to do their own website easily. Right, there was WordPress, right? And then there was a few other Squarespace. Squarespace haven't came out yet.
Okay.
But when Squarespace came out, that part of business totally died, right? Killed it already. Because now in Squarespace you can make beautiful websites with no effort, right? But there was this, basically I was trying to find niche, right, in markets where there's some kind of inefficiency, right?
Yeah.
So these companies, they needed a website done. Okay, those were the easiest job, right? And then we could charge decent amount of money, like $2,000 for a simple website.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And then so it was good times, right, in a sense. Yep. And then for larger companies, for companies with like a bit more like things to solve, right? We would sell them like a CRM solution, for example, or accounting software, right? Or we'll build some in-house how I'll build e-commerce for you. Yep. Right. So we did quite a few e-commerce solutions, right? Companies that wanted to sell their products online. And that was before Shopify came about, right? Before all these tools were there, right? And made things so it was in a sense there was a demand, right, for people to sell things online, and they had no expertise. Yeah.
And once again, it's timing as well, right?
It's timing, right? Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
if you try to do this now, I don't think you're gonna survive, I would say.
Yeah. Tech, I think this
Oh,
SaaS, right? Service as a
yeah,
software as a
correct, correct.
service, yeah, has made it
Yep.
a lot more easier for an entrepreneur or a business person to do this on their own.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And we part of the business also, I saw a trend that people were starting to get into startups. So we did service a few enterprising folks, right? Who say, hey, I want to build this startup idea, right? But I don't know how to program. So we partner them, we help them build the products for them, right? We even worked with, I would say, innovation labs, yeah.
yeah,
So we did work
yeah,
with a couple of innovation labs, right?
yeah.
They had some
Accelerator, right?
ideas. No,
Accelerator.
not really accelerator. So innovation labs are actually like corporates, right? Where they want to in-house
Yeah,
ideas, right? But of course, they don't have the necessary talent within the company,
yeah.
right, to build the product. So they work with like companies like mine, right, to build products for them. So it was fun. It was definitely very fun because we came in, they tell us, okay, we have this idea, we want to do this, but this is like kind of how we want to structure it. So I will go and find maybe UI UX designers. Right? We work with the business side, trying to break down this problem into different solvable sets, and then we started building out this thing together. Right. So as the company progressed over time, we went from doing very simple websites, right, to building products for customers. Right. And again, it was timing, right? Because the trend was there, right? That people wanted to come out and do all these things. Yeah.
And you said that you are a self-taught programmer or developer, right? And you had these skills when you were in school at SMU, or
Oh yeah,
was
yeah. I
this?
mean, I did do information systems as a second major,
Mhm.
which was obviously very uncommon then.
Yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
was like a business guy who did most people did business and finance and
Finance,
marketing,
yeah,
right?
or
Or
econs,
economics and finance,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So whereas I was like, maybe I should just try and do IS, right? Because I could already program, right? And that is probably one of my regrets in life. I should have done that as my first degree because I would
Mm,
have done so much better in school,
mm,
right?
mm.
Yeah, in fact, I did better in my information system courses, right, than my finance mods.
So
Yeah.
you you graduated in 2009 in the midst of a economic crisis, and you still chose, despite having tech skills, right, or some tech skills, some info system skills, you still chose finance as an industry to start your career with. And later on, after trying for like 4 years, right, in trading and in finance, you came to tech, right? Tell us a bit more about that. Like, do you look back and say, "Hey, maybe I should start in tech first"? And was it also a sign of the times, right? When I say that, because a lot of our peers obviously did business school at SMU, and then they are in banking, then in finance. And I personally have friends who say, hey, they can see the writings on the wall, right? That tech has or tech or data has become the new currency, right?
Yep. Yep.
Tech has become the new goal, so to speak. And they are worried, right, with all those digital
Mm.
banks coming on board, like digital banking licenses given by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Um, what's your take on all this, right? Do you look back and say, hey, maybe I should have done tech first instead of
I think it's
finance?
very hard to say that because when we were at the age, I remember like we had no freaking clue what to do in our lives, right? You had so many, you were told your entire life what to do, right? Go study, get a degree,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Be a doctor, be a lawyer, right? Or go to banking, be a consultant. So I would say it's very hard to say that I regretted anything or like we could have foreseen it, right? But I would say that maybe it's definitely a sign in terms of a trend, right? So in the past, I remember when we were in JC, right? It was like, life sciences was the trend, right? We were being herded to do that, and
Yep.
then a lot of people. I remember having early on, after a couple of years after you graduated, I met a friend. I mean, a friend had a baby shower, and then all his friends came from life science, right? So I was talking to like five, six of them, and I was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing now?" Right? Out of the entire group, right, there was only one person who was still doing life science. Literally everybody pivoted and moved on to something else, right? So I would say that it's definitely being able to spot trends. Obviously, if you have the skills, of course, a crystal ball that would be fantastic. But as human beings, I would say that that's tough, to gain that skill. Yeah. So I think a lot comes from reading, getting to know what's in the world, right? Not getting stuck in your bubble, right? And of course, having putting in effort to go and learn more about all these kind of things. Yeah.
So let's talk about career pivots and talk about
Yeah.
transferable skills, right? Earlier on, talk about having transferable skills. You're very confident in your many transferable skills. That's why you're not so worried, or rather, you will feel that you're confident that you can learn something that makes you money, right? May not be a lot, but at least something. How do you recommend people build many transferable skills?
Good question. I
Or at
think it
least
all
how do you
starts
do it?
from.
How do you do it at the very least?
I
Let's start
think
from
maybe
there.
it's a personality thing. Right? I'm a very curious person, right? As you can see from my soap experience, right? I'm very curious. Right? I like to find out what's happening to the world, right? And then when I have a thought, I would just why not just go and read out about it, right? Start from reading, and it all starts from there, right? Finding out information, and you start going down this rabbit hole, right? Reading, and I think it all starts from there. Then, because you can't say you want to do something out of vacuum, right? Like, oh shit, today I wake up. Today I wake up, I say, okay, I want to learn more about molecular biology.
Mm-hmm.
Then you force yourself to go and learn some skills because I want to get a job, right? It doesn't start that way, right? It's more like,
Mm-hmm.
how does sales work, right? Like how do how do they interact with each other, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do medicine work, right? And then you start getting books or reading online articles, and from there you start building up a knowledge base, right? And then from that knowledge base, then you start doing things around it, right? So I would say my latest maybe example I would see, like my latest obsession I would say has been baking, because no thanks to COVID again, right? And not just normal baking, right, but actually sourdough baking, right? Because I was like kind of bored. I was like, hey, how does this fermentation thing work? So I started tinkering in fermentation. It was quite fun. And then I had my own kombucha. I played around for a while. I started pickling, like fermenting other weird stuff. Had the house smell weird, right? And then so the latest was it has been sourdough for the last couple of maybe last year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I bought some books. I read like how do you turn this like flour dough thing that's this sour smelling, right, into a piece of bread, right?
Yeah.
And then how do you tinker around, right? I experimented like times, the different time of fermentation, the different methods, right? And then actually baking a bread, and then so for me it's always about like satisfying this curiosity I have, right?
Yeah. So now, if times are bad, you can also be a baker, right?
Like a baker, yeah, exactly. I mean, people that try my bread, they be like, hey, actually pretty good, like, yeah.
Yeah. I like the word you use about cockroach, right? I think that
Yeah.
was the word that Y Combinator used to describe Airbnb founders, right? The reason why they backed or they invested in Airbnb was because they found that the co-founders, the two of them, they're like cockroaches. They'll do what it takes to survive. And I think I'll add on to what you said about besides being curious and reading and researching more about your curiosity. I think it's also about that mindset shift, right? To say that you need to survive at all costs, and
Yep.
there is no shame, or there is no shame in leveraging certain skills that you might have just to make a living, and this making sure that you survive at all costs. I think that's also I mean, people call it greed sometimes, right? And I think that's also, I feel it's quite powerful for people out there. And I think I say this also because in the context that now a lot of tech companies are having layoffs, and the company where I work at also announced layoffs in July, and I think that also got me thinking about like my own skill sets. So yeah, I like the word about cockroach, having
Yep.
many transferable skills, and making sure you survive. Yeah, I like
I
that a
think
lot.
the most important thing we need to remind ourselves is that no one owes us a living, right? And we have control over our trajectory in life, right? What you can do, where you're going, right? You can't say that, oh yeah, I got no choice at all. You have free will, right? You can choose to do anything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, what's one advice? I mean, you obviously have a very unconventional career path. I think timing played a big part in your moves. What's one advice to people considering career move or career switching right now?
I would say give it a lot of thought, for sure, right? Don't just jump on the bandwagon because, oh, tech is a new thing, right? Lot, I mean, tech is a new thing, but what's inside tech, right? The universe itself is very large, right? There's product, there's marketing, there's development, of course, there's data, right? There's operations, right? There's a lot of things that is involved, right? So I would suggest that people sit down, think through very carefully, and plan for themselves, right? Like having some kind of mental framework, right? Where you are very clear and you can elucidate what you're trying to do and try to achieve, right? And then hopefully from there you iterate upon your decisions, right? So it's not like next day you wake up, okay, I'm going to quit my job and do something, right? It's not, right? It's like, okay, I want to do this maybe in 6 months' time. How do I get there? Right? How do I gain the skills for me to be able to do this in 6 months' time? Yeah. And then what is missing in my life, what kind of support I need, what kind of things I need to learn, right? Who do I need to talk to? Who are people that can help me in this journey? Right. So all those things are very important, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I hear you, right? I think you said three things, right? I think give you a lot of thought. Don't just jump onto the bandwagon. Have some sort of plan and a mental framework on planning this transition, and also think about your support network, right?
Correct.
What's one
Yeah.
advice you give to the fresh grad version of yourself?
Fresh grad version, just do it, man. Nothing to lose.
You see, just now you just said that people should plan, should give it a lot of thought, but now you say just do it.
I mean, fresh grad, you have to try it, right? Because fresh grad, what kind of basis do we have?
True.
Right? Like what kind of experience do you know, right? Like if you're looking back, we go through a lot of things in life, and I realized that talking to people actually, or reading or listening to podcasts nowadays, right? It's actually a very good avenue to learn about things beyond your scope,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you may not know people who are doing this, right? But dude, man, nowadays all these podcasts, especially your podcast, right? It's just to help people with so many things. I learned so much just listening to podcasts, right, in the last 2-3 years that
Yeah.
I wouldn't have necessarily picked up from
Yeah.
friends in the industry or people, right? Yeah, around me. Yeah.
Spot on. I 100% agree with you. Not because I'm doing a podcast, but I've been a big consumer of podcasts, right, myself, right? Thinking
Yeah.
since 2016 onwards. And I've been a big beneficiary. And I think I want to add one thing is that it's not so much about the hard skills you may learn from listening to talking or listening to people or on podcasts or YouTube videos, but it's also about how they think, perspectives, right? And I think that's very valuable, at least to me. Everyone has a job, or everyone has work, everyone has to work at least, before you retire. But how do you approach work? How do you approach certain things in life, right? I think having different perspectives, I feel that gives me more variety, letting me know that what's out there, right? That I'm just not limited to my option or options that me and my friends know, right? So I thought that was really, really powerful for me. It really opened up my horizons and how I view about life. So I'm 100% I agree with you. But and I ask you this because I know you're a thinker, right? My observation is that you're a thinker. This notion about opportunity cost, right? I'm a fresh grad right now, but this few years is important because opportunity cost is high, right? And this could be my foundation years. If I got the wrong step, wrong industry, then I'm wasting my time, right? I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people who say this to you?
Going back to what we talked about last time, right? Having optionalities, right, in terms of your moves, right? So you want to kind of choose a path where it's not a dead end if it doesn't work out, right? So for example, let's say you end up in the early stage in your career, a very, very niche job. I don't know what's a very niche job. Yeah, that someone can relate to on the podcast. Yeah.
Say a niche job could be, I don't know, like a molecular biologist, biotech.
Yeah, I mean, not
right?
dissing them, lah. Okay, not dissing them.
Yeah.
No,
It's very niche. It's just very niche. Yeah, I mean, it's not that.
For niche is that sometimes you really need to have a passion, right? That you do it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you did something niche without a passion, then I don't think you survive. Right.
To me, being an accountant requires is very niche, right? I can never deal with numbers all day. So to me, I think that
to me, accountant actually you gain a lot of skills. You have a lot of optionalities, right? So accounting wise, right, you are very good in numbers. You know companies through and through, right? And outside of accountancy, there's quite a lot of jobs, right?
Okay, I know.
Apply to. Yeah.
I know the answer. Niche could be joining the military, for example. What do you think?
Yeah. So actually, okay, I have very close friends with the military, and we are still constantly having this debate, right? And I hope you listen to this podcast. Literally, we just had this conversation this morning over WhatsApp, right? Because he's considering his own option career plans, right? He's been in army since we left school, but actually even before that, because they sign on like when
Yep.
they're 18, right?
Yep.
So I would say that yeah, probably right, very niche because depends on what you do in the army, right?
Sure.
Right. So if you are
Sure.
like a super secretive unit, you can tell people what you do,
Yeah.
right? Then yeah, your skills cannot be transferred out lah. But if let's say you manage to like maybe sign on be an officer and you have management skills, I would say then still not too bad, right? You could go out there using your interpersonal skills to do something, right? Let's think about it, right? Skills are not just hard skills, right? Like programming or accounting, right? It's also about thinking, strategizing, right? And I would say that okay, even let's say you're in the Air Force, right? You're a pilot. Not too bad, at least you can become a pilot. Right? You're kind of still doing the same thing. But of course, you're very niche, lah. You can only do that pilot path, right? What if one day you cannot fly, right? So that's the question I always ask myself, what if one day I cannot do this?
Yeah.
Right. And then how do you like maneuver yourself out of it, right? So for fresh grads, I would say that having to choose something, right? Just make sure that you acquire skills along the way that you can kind of transfer outside of that particular job, right? Yeah, I think maybe that would be the most beneficial. Yeah.
Sure. So let's talk about optionalities in career. I think during our lunch we spoke about that, and then you said that it's something that your wife spoke to you about, and then there was a big aha moment for you.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what you think about that. Like maybe give us an example of a path, what it means to have optionalities, and how can someone go about their job search or their career path having this in mind.
Yeah, I think it's pretty conditioning from school days, I would say, right? Because having, talking to my wife, we were like, hey, she said, a lot of times in my past where in certain of my career moves, right, I ended up getting to the end. For example, when I went to trading, right, I didn't really think about what's next, right? I only thought about it in the sense that in the best case scenario, wow, I'm going to make a lot of money. Then I'll just do this forever, right? I didn't plan that. Actually, I kind of suck at it. I won't make money, right? And then I need to do something else, right? So it was difficult because I couldn't transit or pivot easily after that long move, right? Whereas for her, when she was she was in the government, she was work like in the first few years of career, she decided to do a CFA, for example, right? I mean, doing a CFA is definitely not an easy task, right? And by the virtue of the fact that having gained that extra knowledge, right? She managed to carve out a new path in life. Think of it as playing RPG game, right? You are a certain character, right? You gain some skills, you level up, right? And then you can, of course, just only pump all the skill sets for a particular track, right? So you can be like the strongest mage, whatever, right? But you're very poor in physical skills. Whereas you could say, okay, I want to also branch off and level up my physical attributes, right? So you can be a very strong mage. You're not the best in both, but at least you can survive quite a lot of different scenarios, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe I will take a step at explaining or defining what's having optionalities for career. So this was interesting during our lunch because I have been also thinking about having optionalities. In fact, I've been trying to plan my career on having optionalities, right? So to me is that when I apply for the next job that I'm going to do, I'm not applying for the next job. I'm applying for the job after that, right? So let's say right now I'm in step 1. Step 2, where my step 2 is, depends on whether how many step 3s or how many options I have for step 3s. That's how I choose my step 2, right? I will choose a step 2 that gives me a lot more options for step 3, right? So I'm choosing my next step for the step after that. So for example, I mean, there's also this, in my mind, this debate about how specialized versus how general you want to be, right? Or your next role is going to be, right? I mean, there's a saying, right? The riches are in the niches, right? Very similar for trading, right? Warren Buffett said, don't over leverage or don't over, always, if you know what you want, go for it. So, I mean, there's also that school of thought, but as for my career, if I don't know what I'm really passionate, what I really like, or where I'm really good at, especially in the beginning of my career, then it makes sense to have optionalities so that I do not close myself to options down the road. Like you said, it's not that possible for us to spot trends, predict the future.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that possibilities down the road in the event that the industry is going to go down or the company is going to go down. You know that you have other options out there. So that's how I kind of define and think about optionalities. Is this similar to what you're thinking?
I would say that maybe we focus a lot more on skills, right? That could survive in different industries, right? Yeah, I mean, for sure, riches in the niches, right? So people who are specialists as a doctor, right, make money, right? Quite a lot of money. So that is not untrue, right? But I think for a majority of people who are unsure where their passion lies or where they want to specialize in, then yeah, you definitely try to have more optionalities, right? So I mean, for me, I guess I'm always maybe how I put it, pessimistic.
You're very curious.
Right? I'm also pessimistic in a sense, right? In a sense where let's say if I become very niche in a particular area, right? I mean, you can see in the past, right? Oil and gas industry. Well, I mean, it's a typical industry, right? People who go in at the beginning make a lot of money, right? They specialize in it. Then before you know it, the thing crashes or whatever, and you spend the next decade, right? Languishing. Right. So that is danger, right? That because you don't know where you can tell, of course, if you are observant enough, right, where you are in a trend, right? Obviously, you want to position yourself, right, at the beginning of the trend as much as possible. Right. Before even people know it. But if everybody is talking about it, right, your friends are talking about it, you are talking about it, right, your mom is talking about it, then maybe you're
It's a bit too late.
but not too late lah, but you know that it's already in the common zeitgeist already.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this joke about like the pilot, right? I mean, of course, a freak thing happened, right? COVID-19 happened, and the joke is that a Grab driver or a Grab delivery driver probably make more money, right, during COVID-19 than a pilot, right? Because
for sure.
they were not flying, right? So, but of course, no one could have like foreseen that, right? I think everyone would generally think that pilot, it's a very prestigious career, it's very niche, being able to handle a plane. Yeah, but yeah, of course, timing matters, right? So 100%, I agree with you. Hiring frameworks. I know you hired people in your past roles, and how do you go about hiring people? What are the kind of frameworks that you have when you hire people?
Yeah, so I mean, this obviously comes from reading quite a few books on hiring, right? And ultimately, we always go back to first principles, like what am I hiring for, right? And as a team, when I'm building a team or building a company, right? Like, well, firstly, what kind of people I want to attract, right? What kind of culture I want to grow, and then obviously that informs the kind of people I'm looking for. Then it fits into my hiring frameworks, right? Where we look at, because I mean, when you apply for a job, right, you have a JD. Okay, you want this particular hard skills and all that. Yeah, hard skills a lot of people can have, but actually the soft skill that is more important to me, right? So large part of my framework also looks at soft skills, right? And then how do I test for these soft skills during my interview process, for example? Yeah. So I a couple of books that I read talking about like high velocity hiring, right? How you can build out frameworks within a company where you're consistent in terms of evaluating your candidates, right? Because actually I've seen in companies such as more like people out when they do interviews, right? Yeah, I told this guy, I like this guy. He's very great talking, right? And then you hire the person. And next thing you know, actually the guy comes in and he's actually pretty crappy at what he does. Right. And then but the thing is like, oh yeah, shit, you made a bad hire, then you just fire the guy or something. But you don't go back to your process and say, okay, in our evaluation, right, actually we messed up here. Right. So hiring frameworks can be simple things like, firstly, the traits that you want to hire for, right? Then questions that help you to answer these traits, right? Or tasks that you can do that can help you to figure this out. Okay, so that's very abstract. So maybe in a less abstract manner, let's say I'm hiring for a team player, right? I said team player, I want a team player. So how do I test for team player, right? So in my interview process, usually I have a round where we do a collaborative exercise together. Let's solve a problem together, right? So I'll throw the candidate, no, we have this issue at work, right? Let's solve this together, right? Guide me through your thought process, right? And then he starts whiteboarding, he or she starts whiteboarding, drawing out the things. And then I can play several roles during the interview. I can be very nasty just to see how this person deals with stress, right? Or rather, someone else can be nasty. So I'll plant someone else in the meeting, right? In the interview that's can be very more critical, right?
Yeah.
Very harsh, right? Just to see how this person reacts, right? Then we do the good cop, bad cop kind of thing also, right? Someone's very bad, someone's very nice, right? And then from there, right, we ask questions, we do together, and then working together as a team, right? Because it's just not just me, right? It's 3-4 hours in the interview itself. We are able to find out whether this person is a team player, right? Because a non-team player will be like, just do everything himself or doesn't share, and then that also helps us with finding out whether this person can communicate or not, right? And depending on what level I'm hiring for, right? Like let's say it's a more junior level, it's okay, it's fine. Maybe because unfortunately the stereotype, developers are not very good at communication, right? It's quite true, right? So that is fine. But if I'm looking for someone senior, right, this is the person needs to come in and communicate and talk about their ideas, right? Then in the process it helps us with that. In terms of framework, there's a lot of things we can do. Another podcast, bro.
Thanks for this. I missed out a point about the career switches, right? I mean, we spoke about during our lunch, like there should be some kind of framework about to know what it's to decide whether a career switch is good and what is not, right? Because you mentioned, you've seen examples among your circle that someone having done a career switch, but it's not a positive one, right? The result was not something that you would like or you would recommend. So how does one think about career switch? Like what's a framework that you think that you have in mind to let someone know whether this career switch is good or not? I know it's always about specific situation, right? But if there's any framework, I think that could be helpful for the audience.
Maybe we have walk through an example. Maybe we have.
Let's say someone in banking, right? Let's say someone who did business school.
Around how old?
And then you spend, so a fresh grad would be about 24 years old for a guy who's gone through NS. And then that 24-year-old spend, let's say, 2 years in banking, right? It could be joining a local bank, right? And local bank, let's say, doing corporate banking. Actually, I don't know what a corporate banker does, but let's say corporate banking. Loans, correct. Right. I mean, I think our time, that was probably average, start fresh grad role, right? So 2 years later, and this guy's been doing for 2 years, and then maybe because people generally, maybe our era or people younger than us, backside EG, right? Okay, what's next? I see so many great resignation, there's COVID-19 and all that. So think about my options. So this person, we put now, could be a guy, could be a girl, but let's go through that scenario.
Okay, so maybe we start from what is the person's interest, for example, right? What kind of? I would say maybe personality. Let's start from personality first.
Okay.
Right. While personality tests are not scientific, they do inform us about how a person thinks or feels, right, or perceives the world. So let's start from there. Right? Knowing yourself is very important, right? Self-awareness. So if you're a person who's like a big picture kind of guy, right, a big picture kind of person, right? You are always hit in the clouds, right? Obviously, your career switch shouldn't be doing something that's very deep in details, right? Right? Like, everything must look at numbers, make sure that all add up together. Not saying that you can't do it, right? But obviously, it's not something that will play to your strengths. Right. So I think start from knowing yourself. I think that is the key thing. Right? A lot of people don't know themselves. Right. Then we go very metaphysical. Like, how do you know yourself? Right. How do you know yourself? How do you find out more about yourself? Right? I think, but that's again another topic. I think our podcast can go for 3 hours, man. If you want to go this.
So we can have part 2 anyway.
If people ask for part 2, then maybe we can talk more about it. So start from personality, start from knowing what's your strengths, what you like, what you don't like. And then I would always advise the younger folks, right, that first you must list out what you don't like to do. Right. So that's easier, right? By elimination of choice, right? Like, I don't like to do this, I don't like to do this, I hate numbers. So obviously you don't go for jobs that involves numbers, right? I love people. Okay, great. That's one way to look at it, right? I love people.
Yeah.
I love talking to people. Okay, good, right? And then from there you build on the next step, right? Okay, what about talking to people? I like to find out about their problems, and then we sit down and discuss about their problems together. Fantastic, right? Then from there you say, okay, what kind of jobs allow me to do that? And then actually problem solving can be a lot of things, right? Even a physiotherapist is a problem solver for people, right?
Yeah.
Your body is broken, you come in and then you fix it, right? Yeah, you're a specialist, but you combine skills of you loving people and maybe you like, you know, physiology, and fixing things, right? Fixing people makes you happy. Okay, yeah, physiotherapist, right? Yeah, so why not try out, right? And then from there you think, okay, I need to go to school, I need to do this, right? But of course, it's very dangerous to say, okay, I'll quit my. Actually, it's not dangerous, right? It's a conditioning from our generation. I say that things are dangerous, and I mean, come on, what's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah.
Right, you quit a job, you go and do physiotherapy for 2 years, right? Right. But of course, before you do that, you must make sure that it's something you like, lah. You expose yourself to the industry,
Yeah.
talk to physiotherapists, right? Talk to people. I think finding out information is very important, right? Yeah. Right. And listening to podcasts, go and read online. Right. Maybe after 2 months, you go like, okay, actually quite boring. Then okay, maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But the more you dig deeper into the field, the more interested you become. Yeah, then maybe that's something you should consider. Yeah.
So I would sort of like summarize it in 3 things, right?
Yep.
Is that number one is self-awareness is very important. So know more about yourself, right? And of course, there are many ways to find out more about yourself. We can go talk about that next time, part 2, if ever there's a request for part 2.
Yeah.
And second part is interest, right? Also finding out like what you like, but more importantly, what you don't like first, because then you can eliminate what you don't like to find out what's out there. And it's also good to consider what you like. And once you're able to narrow down potential paths, industries, or roles, then scoping, research, finding out more about these potential paths through different mediums, right? Talking to people in the industry, talking to friends who know people working in the industry, podcasts, videos, reading up research. Then that with more information, you can better decide whether that's in it for you or not.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
But I mean, I know typical person, how would they approach this, right? Or just quit a job and do. Cannot. I mean, that is definitely very risky, right?
True.
If you ask me. Yeah.
True. I think maybe my thinking is, of course, it depends on the individual. If someone is very socially extroverted, the career choice could be influenced by the friends, right? Everybody in personal banking, like, making money, I also go there. I should also try.
Yeah,
Give me a job
you
there.
know, following the herd always leads you to slaughter, right?
There you go. And it could also be the other path. Influence would be family, right? Oh my, I'm coming from a family full of doctors, but I'm in banking, so maybe I should find. I feel so inadequate at family gatherings, right? Yeah, I think a lot of influences that can happen.
True.
Yeah, I recently I received a question recently, and I thought I want to incorporate that in my interviews. What does success look like to you currently?
Success. I would say success changed over time. And for me now, would be seeing some of these bets that I made work out, right, in terms of career. Right? Getting, of course, some monetary rewards is nice. But ultimately, I would think that at this stage in my life, my family is very important. Right? So if I fail at my family, then I can have a very successful career. Right? And at home, things are shit, right? And I think I will have failed. So success would be balancing, growing a family, and then also having a very rewarding job, right? That to me would be success at this point in time. Yeah.
And if you were to recall yourself 5 years ago and 10 years ago, right? 5 years ago, what were you doing? You were probably in StashAway, right?
StashAway, yeah. So at that point in time, success was, let's make this startup work, man.
Okay.
Right. And still very young in terms of family, right? I'm not even married or anything, and it's like, just get this thing going. Let's see where we can go. Yeah.
And if I drag this further, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, I just wanted to be rich, man. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be a millionaire. I wanted to, multi-millionaire. And that was actually a mistake I made, I would say. I spent maybe a bit of time on that. Right. I think we were informed probably because of family, right? That money was very, 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 very important. I mean, money is important, but it cannot be the driver, right? So I would say that my path into trading was because I was purely driven by riches, right? In the sense that I wanted to be insanely rich, right? I want to make a lot of money. And because it became so-called my God in that sense, right? Where I am very, wake up in the morning, first thing I think is about money. I go to sleep, I think about money, right? And then it causes you to get very blinded because um, worshipping money in a sense didn't allow me to choose the correct path, I would say, yeah, in life. Right. And the meaning, it wasn't as meaningful. Like for now, what I'm doing, I think is very meaningful, right? Helping companies, helping within the company itself or building product itself and benefiting a lot of people through their lives, right? Like my time at StashAway, right? Building a product that has touched hundreds of thousands of people's lives, right? Changing their perspective on investing itself, right? That to me is very meaningful.
Yeah,
Right?
mine included.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, StashAway was my first Robo-Advisor that I used, and
Yeah.
I thought I really liked the user interface, yeah, and the philosophy behind it. So yeah, so I got to
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Anything you want to build on, like success 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now, how does it change
Yeah,
across
I
the years?
think your life changes, right?
Yeah,
Family situation changes. You also get older, not so much energy. You can't just keep running all the time. Right?
Mm.
So yeah, I guess that's it.
What's one thing that you did on your own terms, right? For example, embarking on something or making a decision that was super difficult, drastic, unpopular, or even like face opposition from your own loved ones or even yourself.
Yeah, I would say that I did a lot of things on my own terms actually. So right, I ignore advice, which maybe was folly, right, earlier to go into trading, right? Yeah, and then going into business and all that. It was very difficult, I would say, right? Not a path that I would suggest to everyone. But I say that I wouldn't have done it any other way because my makeup is like that, right? My programming is like that, right? I always tend to choose a bit more unconventional just to see how things go, right? And I guess at the end of the day, as long as I'm happy and no regrets, right? I think most importantly, right, that motto is having no regrets in life,
Yeah, spot
right?
on.
I think right, if I didn't go through that training stint, right, I would probably think that, oh man, what if I became a trainer? Maybe I would be very successful at it, right? But because I did it earlier on in my life, I have done it before, so I know that okay, maybe not full time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and
spot
then
on.
my skill sets can be done in something else. Yeah,
Yeah, no, spot on. I'm 100% concur with that. And I mean, no regrets in life is a big part of my mission statement as well. I think
yeah,
I always wanted to try my hands at being an entrepreneur. I did that. I did the laser tag business thing.
yep.
Although that was
Remember
very
that?
unconventional. Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, what the hell you? I told everyone, right? I didn't like NS, right? I didn't like real guns. Why
yeah.
am I
You don't
spending now?
actually.
Yeah, why am I spending my time now playing with fake guns, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, so I just thought I wanted the experience, and yeah, spot on. And this podcast as well, I always been talking about wanting to do something like that, to sort of give back. And I mean, regardless how this works out, I don't have any ambition to be famous or rich through the podcast, but I want to have material to give back, right, to people who are going through the same paths that you and I have gone through ourselves.
yeah,
So yeah, I think sometimes I mean I hear this question, this thing, right? If not now, then when, right? And
exactly.
one of the lines that I heard in the podcast was about the best time is always right fucking now, you know. So my last question to you would be, what's one book, movie, YouTube video, podcast you found yourself recommending it to others recently, and why?
Maybe books. Probably have a lot of books. Depending on the situation again, right?
Sure. Recently, right? You
Maybe
found yourself recommending to others recently.
recently thinking, right? Like mental models, right? Because we are faced with so many decisions every day. Right? How do you think
Yeah.
better? Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't really talk much about that, but yeah. So I don't have it here. Right,
Ray
there's this
Dalio?
vlog called. Ray Dalio is okay, but some things are a bit extreme, so I wouldn't
Sure.
recommend to everyone,
Sure.
right? Because some people can take it. I think just starting from the mental models by Jim Parrish, right? That book itself, right? It's a very good summary of different ways of thinking and dicing problems, right? Going down from first principles or first order, second order thinking, right? third order thinking, right? Very simple things like this, or Occam's razor, right? I think being able to think better will help us in a lot of things in life. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I'll definitely put it in the show notes. Thanks. That's all the time we have. Thank you very much for your time, Yaohong.
Hey, thanks, man. Hopefully you got part two.
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, thanks.